Over the past few months, I've platinumed the first 2 games in the Super Meat Boy series. The first game is an all-time classic, offering fast, precise, and brutally difficult platforming. The sequel, Super Meat Boy Forever, jumped genres to an auto-runner. While it wasn't what fans were expecting, I personally found it to be a massively underrated game that still offered the same addicting gameplay and challenge as the first. So the stage is set. If the third game can stick the landing, it will cement these games as one of the greatest video game trilogies of all time. So here we are, Dr. Fetus's Mean Meat Machine. So as you might be able to tell, this one didn't quite offer the same excitement as the first 2. Nevertheless, let's take a look at the platinum journey. For step 1, we're just going to play through the game casually. This game has 6 worlds, and they're all familiar locations from the first 2 games. You have the forest, the hospital, the salt factory, Tetanusville, Hell, and the lab. Each world has 20 levels in it, including a boss fight. Here's a look at level 1-3, which will give you a good sense of the game. The game is a puzzler, similar to Dr. Mario, Puyo Puyo, or Tetris. You advance through each level by connecting 4 pieces of the same color. Every time you do so, you fill this meter to the left. Some levels only have you fill the meter once, but others, like this level, have multiple stages. After completely filling the meter, one of these lights turn red, and new obstacles are added to the stage. Just like in the original Meat Boy game, these levels will slowly become more and more dangerous, filling the space with saw blades, lasers, and other objects that can destroy your pieces. Filling a meter also serves as a checkpoint. If your pieces hit an enemy, you'll be sent back to the beginning of the stage, but not back to the very start of the level. Once you fill all of the meters, you clear the level. Take note of this clear screen. Every level has a time that you need to beat to get an A+, and for now, we're nowhere near fast enough. We'll be coming back to these times near the end of the platinum. For now, I continued along through the first world of the game. As you might expect in a puzzle game like this, you can plan ahead and set up combos. If you set up your stack correctly, clearing one set of pieces can make your stack cascade into another clear. Here I get my first trophy of the game by getting my first 2 combo. After getting a combo, your pieces are invincible for a few seconds, which can be really important in some of the more chaotic endgame levels. As we continue through the first world, we get a few more miscellaneous and story-related trophies. Every now and then, after completing a level, you'll get a trophy for mutating one of your pieces. This is related to the story. Dr. Fetus is trying to create a perfect Meat Boy clone and is slowly making progress. These mutations have no real impact on the game, other than your pieces slowly changing shape and becoming to look more and more like Meat Boy. On level 11, we also get a trophy related to clearing 100 pieces. We'll eventually need to clear 500 and then later 1,000 pieces to get more miscellaneous trophies. Our next 2 trophies came from level 113, and these trophies really highlight how frustrating this game can be. This level had 4 different stages where more and more saws appear over time, and they even start to move. By the time I got to this last stage, I had this big cluster of yellow and red pieces at the bottom of the board. The board was so cramped and my upcoming pieces were pretty useless, and I just couldn't make any progress. I constantly died trying to sneak pieces under these saw blades. I died so often that I got this trophy for dying more than 10 times on a single level. I honestly got more frustrated on this level than just about any challenge in Super Meat Boy or Super Meat Boy Forever. In Meat Machine, it feels absurdly frustrating to die. All 3 games in the series really commit to this theme of brutally difficult levels. But in order for that to work, it is critical that you actually feel okay when you die, because you're going to be dying a lot. The other games really managed to figure this out, and I can't quite put my finger on why Meat Machine fails this, but it does, and it is super frustrating. This level got to be so bad that I unlocked a second trophy for dying more than 50 times on a single level. I'm not exaggerating, I really don't rage at games at all. I kept my cool throughout the first 2 games of the series, but this level alone really made me want to turn off my console and just never play this game again. Luckily, I managed to finally pull through and beat this level, and I was so glad to put it behind me. Alright, moving along, we get to the boss of the first world. For the most part, bosses in this game feel like regular levels with just a unique enemy. So for example, in this boss, we're fighting this robot who has saws for arms instead of your normal saw blades. I will say that it's a nice touch that this is the same boss from Meat Boy and Meat Boy Forever. I definitely appreciate this continuity between the 3 games, and I think it's pretty cool that they're able to modify these boss battles to fit within these 3 different genres: a platformer, auto-runner, and puzzler. We finally beat this boss and get a trophy for beating the first world. So on to World 2, the hospital. The main new mechanic in this world are these ghosts that float around the stage. They'll bounce off pieces that you've already placed, and so if you really wanted to, you could be strategic about how you're putting your pieces to really corner off the ghosts. Here we get another mutation trophy for beating the 7th level of the world, and we also get a trophy for beating the boss of the world. This boss was fun. At each new stage he splits in half, and you have more enemies to dodge. In World 3, the Salt Factory, you're introduced to more classic Meat Boy enemies like these rockets that will follow your pieces, and there are also some buttons that will make the level change. They'll make saw blades appear or disappear or kind of change the stage. In this world, we get 3 trophies. The first is another trophy coming from a mutation when we beat stage 7. The next trophy comes from destroying our 500th piece. And finally, the last trophy in this world comes from beating the boss. This boss was slightly different. Clearing pieces actually don't matter in this fight. Instead, you need to build your stack up tall enough to press these buttons and have the boss run into the saw blades. I definitely appreciated this slight change of pace. It made for kind of a different level. So on to World 4. This world introduces these laser beams that will nullify your pieces if they get hit. Honestly, I wasn't a big fan of this mechanic. It tended to just slow things down and make things more frustrating than it needed to be. I got another trophy for more mutations after beating level 7, and another for beating the boss. This boss was another callback to Super Meat Boy Forever. This guy shoots lasers that rotate around his body. Again, a nice callback to an old game, but not a super compelling boss in this case. So we're getting near the end of the game with only 2 worlds left. World 5 is Hell and introduces these tiles that will crumble as you move pieces over them. We get another mutation trophy after beating level 7, and then another boss related trophy. This boss was actually pretty tough. The timing is pretty tight to sneak your pieces past both his fists and the gaps that he makes. Alright, so we're off to the final world. This final world combines all of the mechanics in the previous worlds. As you can see from this level, we have crumbling tiles, laser beams, and moving saw blades. In this world, we get a miscellaneous trophy for destroying our 1000th piece, and we get 2 more mutation trophies when Dr. Fetus finally transforms the clone into a perfect Meat Boy clone. The final boss of the game is Dr. Fetus himself, and he throws clone versions of himself onto the board to block your progress. The first few phases of this fight are nothing spectacular, but I actually really like the final phase. You have to build on a pile of dynamite and have very little room to work with. You just need to complete one set, but have to go super fast since Dr. Fetus is throwing everything he has at you. After beating this final boss, we can't quite rest yet because there are actually 2 trophies related to this credits screen. For the first of these trophies, we have to kill less than 15 Meat Boys during the entirety of the credits. This actually isn't that hard. All you need to do is drop your pieces as slowly as possible and make sure that you don't hit these saw blades in the middle of the board. But I won't lie, I got a little bit nervous here as the credits continue to roll. Look how close these final pieces get to the saw blades. I really wasn't sure if I was going to make it or not. Alright, and so with the main game out of the way, we're about halfway through the platinum. Our goal now is to go back and get an A+ in every single level. Every level has a certain time requirement, and we have to beat the level under that time. I went back to the start of the game, and I actually think some of the levels in the first world are the hardest in the entire game to get an A+ on. A lot of levels later in the game are pretty generous with their time requirements, but these first few at the very start of the game are super tight. You have almost no room for error. You basically need to hold down the entire time to drop your pieces as fast as possible. One nice little trick is that the piece order is always the same, so if you're really struggling, you can memorize this piece order and plan your moves accordingly. I slowly made it through each of the worlds, getting a trophy at the end of each world after A+ing every level. I would say that on average it took me 2 or 3 times to complete the A+, and so it probably took me 5-10 minutes per level. I definitely got better at the game over time, but I really didn't feel like I was mastering the game. In Meat Boy and Meat Boy Forever, you feel like a total badass when you get good enough at the game to beat some of these super hard levels flawlessly. In this game, you really don't get that feeling at all. It's just kind of a slog through these levels that get slightly harder as the game goes on. As I was A+ing levels, I managed to get another miscellaneous trophy. Here I pull off a combo of 4 clears during the second world. I really didn't plan this ahead of time, but it was a nice surprise when I saw that everything would fall into place. For me, the hardest level to A+ in the game was World 4, level 11. This is the only level in the entire game that I skipped and had to come back to. It was very difficult to sneak your pieces past these saw blades and lasers while still managing to go really quickly. You had to keep up a pretty fast pace, and you probably had to play perfectly for about 80 seconds. Once I beat this level, I got the trophy for A+ing every level in World 4. After that, I cruised through World 5 and 6, getting A+ trophies for each world. I was really glad to get these trophies out of the way. Again, they were kind of a grind. And thank God there were no deathless runs like there are in Meat Boy and Meat Boy Forever. If you had to clear these worlds without dying, I seriously think that this platinum would be more difficult than either of those other 2 games by quite a bit. You'd have to be so careful and so patient. I really don't think I would have had the patience to do it. Anyways, after beating the final boss for a second time, we have a shot at getting the second credits-related trophy. For this trophy, we need to kill more than 200 Meat Boys during the credits. Again, this one was pretty easy. You just need to drop your pieces at max speed into these first set of saw blades. We get this trophy, and with that, we only have 2 miscellaneous trophies left. For this first one, we need to die 100 times on a single level. I guess I'm glad we didn't run into this trophy naturally while playing this game, but it took about 10 minutes to go into a level and die 100 times. I picked a level that had an easy enemy to hit and began dropping pieces as fast as I could. So our 100 death trophy finally pops, and we're on to the last trophy of the game. We need to do a 6 combo, something that never came up naturally over the course of the game. After picking a fairly safe level, I tried setting up as many pieces as possible and finally started the cascade. After getting that combo, I got the last trophy and platinumed the game. Again, I don't really recommend this game that much, but I'm glad I got the platinum for every game in the series. Thanks for watching, subscribe to see more, and definitely check out my videos on Super Meat Boy and Super Meat Boy Forever. Bye.